Probably not. Well, that was when we came to the board.
Oh, I thought I already approved this. These aren't the same. Apparently we have two. That's easy. That was a short.
I've got myself.
Are we on?
Yes, you're on.
Oh.
I was just messing with the camera. It felt blurry to me, but
Okay.
it appears to be okay.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Maggie Williams is absent this evening, and the rest of the board members are here. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I need a motion for an agenda adjustment to add policy BE as a first read as 11D.
So moved.
Okay, anybody second? Second. All in favor? Alan, are we speaking loud enough for you?
Well, we'll find out. I can always boost the audio.
Okay,
So
I can use some more lung power.
I'll get the sheet for you. Give them a couple minutes.
Okay. We don't have an action item. That was just left over from last time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so on the minutes for, I think we should probably start with the January 11th special school committee meeting. That was in the packet. Interesting. I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and then the minutes from the January 18th meeting. I need a motion to accept. So moved. Okay. Yes,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right. Okay. Did we have anybody sign up for public comments on agenda items?
So let me check.
And if it's for discussing the reopening plan, I will open that up to public comment. It's number 12 on our agenda. So those of you who came to comment on that, that would include masks or whatever, anything to do with our reopening plan, we'll discuss that then.
Preliminary interest.
Okay, thank you. So Helen, I know that's why you're here. Chris, I'm assuming you want to discuss that as well. And Mary, is that what you wanted to discuss?
If there's anything like this which needs to be said, I want to just agree.
Okay, all right. That sounds good. Okay. So let me Okay, so did anybody want to make a public comment on any other agenda item? No. Okay, do we have a presentation tonight?
We do not.
Move it right along. So we are at our principals report.
Okay. Here, the camera line sight. All right, so as of February, and I actually can update this to yesterday, February 14th. We have 113 students, 71 are either vaccinated and or have had COVID, which gives us a rate of 63%. We have 43 staff, and that includes all of our staff, our bus drivers, our part-timers and everything. 39 are either vaccinated and or have had COVID-19, which puts us at 91%. The second grade coordinated the food drive this year. They collected a total of 325 items. The second grade collected the most by bringing in 173 of those items. Second place was fifth grade with 86 items, and third place was fourth grade with 24 items. We also celebrated the 100th day of school on February 10th. Students brought in collections of 100 objects. You probably saw some as you came in, which were very creative. We've got some really creative ideas this year. And we also worked on different activities related to the number 100, and many students dressed up as if they were 100 years old.
And how did that look?
Yes, and if you walk down the hall, on the bulletin board in between the two bathrooms on the left, second grade, because of course there's an app for that, took pictures of all the kids of what they would look like, 50, 60 years from now. I don't want to use that app. We have a pretty neat newsletter for March. I've given you each a copy of it. There are some great pictures in it from the 100th day celebration. And as an FYI, our large passenger van, which is primarily used to transport students to special purpose private schools, was in an accident on the 31st. There was one driver and two students on board. They were rear-ended while stopped the stoplight. Thankfully, nobody was going too fast. Everyone was fine. No one went to the hospital. I got there. By the time I got there, which was about half an hour later, she was just waiting for me to show up. Nobody else was there. The police were gone, the fire department was gone. And the driver of the truck that hit him was allowed to drive away with his horn blaring because his airbags deployed. The van is still drivable, but I am working with the insurance company to get it fixed. And next week is her birthday.
Thank you. All right. I do not have a report tonight. Oh. We did direct our attorney to file an appeal or make a comment to the Portland Water District in relation to this proposed quarry that we are opposed to. So that's the only update I have on that. So we're still working on it. Okay, that's it for me. Dave?
Do you want to? The appeal, I know it's a lengthy thing. Is it published somewhere so we can look at it?
The one that Dan wrote for us.
Yeah, the one for Friday.
Thursday.
Excuse me, Thursday,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a copy of it on email. I can send it to you.
Yeah, I'd just like to,
Okay, sure.
I'm sure I wouldn't want to read it all, but I'd like to scan it.
Yeah, it seemed to be fairly well written, which
Yeah,
is
I would expect that.
what I would expect. So, yeah, I'll send that to you.
Thank you. So brevity being the theme of the evening, I want to let people know that I've shared an overview of the draft FY23 budget with school committee and workshop just prior to this meeting. Don't want to go over any numbers yet. There's still a lot of movement that we anticipate, but as of right now, the good news is we anticipate a fairly significant increase in state funding. primarily based on our prior 2 years special education expenses, which we are reimbursed for as part of the state formula. That is good news. There is an increase in expenditures in our local budget. We believe that's good news because it's continuing to provide our students and staff with what they need to be successful. And there will be an increase in the local tax assessment due to schools. Our goal is to keep that as reasonable as possible. And when we next meet in March, I will present the superintendent's budget to the committee for discussion and action prior to moving the budget forward. 2 personnel items. We've accepted Ron Hanscom's request for an unpaid leave of absence for the remainder of the school year. And we wish Ron the best of luck as he continues to support his wife in these trying times. So Ron, we look forward to you being back. And also Emily Barrio, who is our contracted English language learner staff member, is about to become a parent again, and she will not be coming back next year. So we'll be looking for somebody else to provide our support for English language learning. And that is my brief report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're up to our action items. I need a motion to accept the Student Code of Conduct File Code JIC as a second read.
So moved.
Wendy.
Do you want to be the second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any discussion?
Children.
Any discussion?
No.
All right, seeing none. All in favor?
Yep.
So
Okay,
Joe, I had you as the motion and Wendy is the second, am I right?
That's correct.
You can't both do the motion.
okay, and now I'm looking for a motion to accept all 3 of the job descriptions as second reads: custodian, school bus driver, and van driver. Okay, so Chris moved it,
Seconded.
Joe seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay,
And both of these are to read and accept, am I correct?
yes.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I didn't see that FY23 budget as an action item. That
Oh.
should not be there.
Okay, so we'll just.
That's a typo.
Okay, oh, so this should be,
Yes.
okay, and then the agenda adjustment we made with the policy revision, first read on policy BE, which is school committee meetings. I'm looking for a motion to accept that as a first read.
Motion to accept it as a first read as amended.
Okay. Okay, Chris seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. There. All right, so now we are up to. Now we are up to our main thing tonight. Our discussion item of our 21-22 school reopening plan. And what I'm gonna do is open it up to public comment. You're not commenting during public comment. It is for anybody who would like to comment, who is part of the public. And then when I close public comment, then the board can have a discussion. Okay? So Helen, you signed up first.
Can I sit?
You can sit, it's fine.
So, I want to start with good news, and I have to remove my mask. I think the most important news for me is that this school was able to stay open for the entire school year. I think it was just amazing. It just talks about the hard work from the staff, from the students. from Chris. I know it's been a lot of extra work. I've talked to other school nurses that talk about what a nightmare it is to be able to enter all the data in for the state. Because when you're doing the testing, you not only have to put in the data for the positive kids, but you have to put in all the negative kids as well. And so I really commend you, Chris, for your hard work. Thank you. And please pass that on to the staff, how amazing I think they are for getting through this. There's a lot of good news to talk about. One of them is that the cases, the everyday cases are down. Today was not a good day to look at it because the CDC brought in a backlog of cases that they'd had for several weeks, which brought it to like 10,000 cases, but that wasn't just for today, thank goodness. Yeah, and continue with the good news is the hospitalizations are down. I think there was only 260 people in the hospital today. There was only 64 in ICU. There were only 17 on a ventilator. That is so far down from where we were before. So we're just making such good progress. I'm so excited about it. Maybe we'll end up having a somewhat normal summer. As far as the masks go, I just have some really strong feelings about it. I think it's one of the reasons that we made it through the school year without having to close down. We do have above 100 positive cases in the town of Sebago. I don't know how many over 100 because they only give us a range. But it certainly could have been a lot higher. It could have gone to 200, 300. So that's a real positive thing. I know that there's been a couple of people in Sebago that passed away due to COVID, but both of those had some comorbidities. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have passed without the COVID, but it certainly was a contributing factor. I don't, at this point, even with all the good news, I don't think that we should give up on the masks just yet, because I think it's too soon. To me, it's almost like taking half a dose of the antibiotic you were supposed to take because you're feeling a little bit better, and then only for you to get really sick again and maybe worse, or stopping the Tylenol because your fever went down a little bit. I just think we need to give it more time to make sure we're continuing on the downward path. It would be a lot harder to say, okay, no more masks, and then have to go back to the masks afterwards, than to just leave it in place for a while. That's up to the board to determine when you want to say, you know, I think maybe it's time. But I think a good compromise certainly was to say, if we continue with the decline in the cases, that it's time for the masks to go. But when would that be? I don't know.
You don't have a recommendation on that?
I'm sorry,
You don't have a recommendation on
I do.
when you might think?
I do. I guess I would say if we continue the way we are, maybe at the end of the first week in March. And the reason I say that is because school vacation week is coming up, and these kids are going to be everywhere. So when they come back from school vacation, they have 2 weeks. If we wait until the end of the second week in March for them to develop symptoms and be positive. So that would be my recommendation, but that certainly, you know, is something for you guys to consider. Last week, there were no children under 18 hospitalized, but we did for the winter, 24% of the positive cases were people under 20. So it's not a, you know, for people to say, I've heard them say, when you get influenza, it's no worse. When you get COVID for kids, it's no worse than the flu. Well, that's not true. We've had a lot of children die. Thank goodness none of them in Sebago, But there have been a lot of children dying, some of them that are very sick, and we don't know what the long-term effects are gonna have for them. So it's not, we just can't make light of it. So I think it's worth the wait to see where we go in the next 3 weeks.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I'm curious about the nature of a virus.
You have to speak up, Donna.
Okay, I'm curious about the nature of a virus. So we've had the initial COVID, which I don't know what they called that one.
Delta.
No, we had Delta after that one. We
Delta,
had,
beta.
yeah,
COVID.
yeah. So we had COVID, then we had Delta. That was the first variant. Now we have Omicron, and I hear there might be another variant. And in reading up on the Spanish influenza, where they didn't have vaccinations at that point in history, each variant that came along may have been more contagious, but the symptoms were milder, and it just reached a point where it kind of became just a regular flu. So is there anything you can enlighten us with for information on how the COVID virus, and maybe if you can't, maybe Chris could.
Well, influenza, we talked about this at the very beginning of the first, the Delta, that's what I'm calling the first one, is the Delta, because that was the one that was so serious, is if you could get herd immunity, then you wouldn't continue to get variants. But we had such a hard time. First, we didn't have a vaccine at all. And then after we got the vaccine, we had a hard time getting people to accept the vaccine. So we never reached herd immunity as part of the problem. So as long as we have unvaccinated people, we're going to continue to have variants. It's just how contagious they'll be and how long they'll be hanging around. So, my wish is, I wish I could really talk to a lot of the anti-vaxxers and just explain that to them. But, it's almost too late to debate this, because whatever I say isn't going to change an anti-vaxxer's mind, just like it's not going to change an anti-mask person's mind. So we'd have to agree to disagree on this. But unless we can get people to believe in this vaccine and believe in wearing masks, we're going to continue to have variants. Maybe they won't be as bad. The flu this year, I just got the report on influenza. The flu for the 6th week in the state of Maine, they did 523 tests, and they only had 4 positive out of 523. We used to have so many people die from influenza, but now because people are wearing masks, if you put a mask on, the bacteria and the viruses can't come out. If somebody else put on, they can't spread the bacteria and the viruses to you. So that's why we don't have the common cold, we don't have influenza. So, there are some good points to this, but we've had so many children die from influenza in the past. It's so nice to see that we don't have deaths from it this year. But I am worried. I hope I'm answering your question, because I'm going on and on and on. I'm really hoping that we get enough people vaccinated, or enough people that have been infected, that we will end up getting a herd immunity. And I do think we're going to end up for a while with 2 vaccines every fall, a COVID vaccine and an influenza vaccine.
Okay.
So did I answer your question?
I maybe not so much, but that's okay.
No, tell
You
me.
gave some good information. And maybe Chris can take a stab at it.
Okay,
Okay. Are you all?
Yeah.
All set? Okay. Mary, did you say you wanted to go last?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, you're up.
Okay, and to kind of answer your question on the variants, I think what you got to consider is, if you thought of COVID like a dog, COVID's the dog, and the variants are like the poodle and the Great Dane and the Chihuahua. And the Omicron is maybe like a really friendly golden retriever. And then there's an also called a BG variant. And that's kind of like a black lab or a chocolate lab. It's just a different color of the same thing. So they're all COVID and they're all the same type of virus. And they all affect the respiratory condition. So
Okay,
that's,
so I think my question is more along the lines of, so we're 2.5 years into this virus. And we've seen, I think, 3 different versions of it at this point in time. And so the Omicron, surprisingly, even though it's more contagious, the symptoms seem to be milder. From everything I've researched.
They are for people that have been vaccinated, Donna, but not necessarily for people that haven't been vaccinated.
So people I know who haven't been vaccinated have, I've been asking everybody, okay, so you had COVID, tell me what your symptoms were like, how sick did you get? And the people that, and mind you, it's a small little world where I live, so the symptoms that all of these people, other than 2 elderly parents of a friend of mine, who both passed away from COVID during the holidays. But these other people that I know, and my own experience is that it was very mild. And I'm just curious because I've heard different things and I've researched a little bit online, trying to find information. I'm not a scientist, but most viruses follow a certain pattern, I guess. So
So I think I guess I have to disagree with you a little bit on it being milder for people that are not vaccinated. Because at one point not long ago, 95% of the people in the hospital and on ventilators were from the Omicron virus, not from the Delta. And
well, I said only just in my little
Right.
world,
right,
the
well, you
people
talked
that
to
I
the lucky
know.
ones, Donna,
Okay.
because there's a lot of people that weren't so lucky. We had so many deaths. I just read in the paper today about a man who had a new son, only 4 months old, that just died. I know that's one case, but I disagree with the fact that it was milder for people that were unvaccinated.
Okay, Chris, it's still Chris's. I'm sorry, I apologize, Chris. So you're free to,
okay. So
thank you.
we kind of went off on the tangent, and
Yeah,
I
we
just
did.
kind of wanted to bring the focus back to Sebago Elementary and the reopening plan. And why I kind of don't feel we're quite ready to discuss masks right yet. And I'm not very good at graphs, but I tried to graph on, bring it up, or how busy we've been in the month of January with positives of COVID at Sebago Elementary. We did have to go remote for a few days, 3 days, because of staffing shortages. We've been busy with it, and we had last week, none of our pools were positive, which was wonderful. But this week we just informed that we did have a positive poll, and we have 3 positives so far. So I would like to see this go down and be back like October, remember way back when, back down there. And so I feel that our case counts maybe for Cumberland or maybe for Maine, but not for Sebago quite yet. I'd like to see more data points showing that we're going down. The other thing that has happened is we did have a vaccine clinic. And we had 4 children who were vaccinated. They had their 2nd shot yesterday. And our Sebago Elementary's vaccine rate is 16%.
Is that for students?
That's for students.
The numbers on the,
And
Maine
Cumberland County's vaccine rate for 5 to 11-year-olds is 58%. One of the best in the country. So we shouldn't, and then Maine for 5 to 11-year-old is 36%. So to me, we're not quite at a really, I know that some people have referenced articles of different states doing away with their school masks. The governors and people way above me. Massachusetts, in an article that someone sent, how they're discussing doing away. The authors of that came from the town of Newton, Massachusetts, so I looked that up. Their children's vaccination rates were 58%. So the idea of many of our students have, luckily, very luckily, they've been positive, but they've been very asymptomatic or have had very little symptoms. There's some things that are saying, unless you have a good case of COVID, you might not get enough immunity as you, especially you won't get as much as you get from the vaccine. A person that has gotten COVID and has gotten immunity, they're like, that's the best. But there are people that are vaccinated that still get COVID, but they do not get it as sick, and they do not go to the hospital, and they do not pass away. There are people that have had COVID and can get it again. There's research is just coming on the severity of that. And in children, right now, children don't have all the options. We still have the pre-Ks who cannot get a vaccine. The children cannot get monoclonals. Children cannot get the treatment. There's about, a really scary statistic is that there's 2 children in the US that die each day from COVID since September. So I'd rather be overly cautious with our children than to just let the masks fly. And until we got either the pattern of the Omicron going down for us or the vaccine rate going up for us. But some of those, to put another variable in there and take it out, I just think we're paying roulette with our children.
I just have a clarifying question. I think what's also really tricky about this, finding data that's the same. And so on maine.gov today, they said 54% of Sebago public school youth are vaccinated.
That's also the,
Does that
high
include
school
high
and
school?
the
middle
It's
school?
by zip
Okay,
code.
Gotcha. I just wasn't sure because I was doing
I
the
know,
same thing, trying to
it's-
figure out like,
it's,
and I wonder, part of me wonders too, like, I don't know that you like, which kids you know are vaccinated, because Sebago's vaccine clinics came a lot later than vaccines were like eligible for kids. So I know a lot of parents,
I have access to the state
okay,
data. So I went through when the state law and you're supposed to make sure that all your kids have mumps, measles and rubella and all of that data. They also list the COVID data that school nurses. So on February 2nd and 3rd, I went through every student and pulled who was, and that's where I got the number.
And what was that number again, Chris? 16?
16%.
16?
Yeah.
16.
But there'll be 4 more kids as of next Monday that will be from our vaccine clinics.
Yeah.
so didn't Kirsten, you said that 71 kids are vaccinated or have had COVID,
Correct.
just to be sure.
Yes, yes, that puts us at 63%.
Right,
Right.
but can I ask you a question about that? Because I wasn't sure of that because of what you said about whether or not, how long does your immunity last after you've had COVID? Right, it doesn't last a year, it doesn't last, they don't know, right?
It just
Right.
depends on how strong your case was.
Right, so you don't, like, if you had COVID in September, you may not be still immune now, is that
Right.
correct? Right, because that was confusing.
It's
to
almost
me.
better to get a real bad case, I hate
Yeah.
to say that.
Well, like the measles, like, chicken pox,
Yeah.
but, yeah, so these are kids who had COVID throughout the year, correct, Kirsten?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and of those 71, 24 are fully vaccinated. And 3 of those have also had COVID, 2 are partially vaccinated, meaning they're either their 2 weeks aren't up or they've had only 1 shot.
So about 50 of those 71 are just from COVID cases that they had.
45, this was as of a few days ago, which
Yeah.
of course have changed. But, so we're at like 48, I think, have had it.
Okay, but and they're not necessarily that vaccinated, they are unvaccinated. So we don't know how long their immunity will last.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to know.
Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just think that when you're thinking about your criteria of when the mask should go, I think those data points should also be included in what's happening here in the school versus what's happening in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mary?
So one thing I wanted to add was I thought with Omicron, our death rates actually went up.
I'm sorry,
In terms-
couldn't
I
hear.
thought that our death rates actually went up, or our count for rates went up.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I thought that with the Omicron, I thought that death rates actually went up. That's what I thought, and that they're coming down now, but that you have a higher risk of dying if you got a serious portion of it than during Delta.
Well,
Or you didn't have to have the
there's
number of
something that
people
play
dying
into
today.
the immunity. It's your age. As you get older, you lose your immunity to a lot of different things. It's if you got the vaccines, if you got your booster, some people are not going to their booster and they really need to. It's if you got COVID, how bad was it? The worst case that you have, the better immunity you're gonna have, because it shows that your body is fighting, came up to fight those viruses. So, some people who say they're not gonna get another vaccine because they got sick with the last one, it's because their body was doing the right thing, and that's why they got sick with it. So, again, I hope I'm answering your question. I should have turned my hearing aids up.
Mary, did you
But
have
if I
anything
can
else you wanted to
also-
add?
Include, there's now treatments that people are getting.
Correct.
You know, before we didn't, along with the vaccine, we didn't have the monoclonals, or we didn't have the antivirals, or the different, they're now using the vent mask and pressurized ventilation more. The techniques they're using are different. There's a lot of treatments that are available, so people, luckily, not so many people are dying, but if you look, the percentage of people that are hospitalized are the unvaccinated at a higher percent than the vaccinated.
And there's a fourth booster. Sorry.
Okay, Mary, did you finish? Okay, Anne?
Joe will appreciate this because I know it all. And if you want to look at the Spanish flu, they had 4 waves and they were all quite deadly. It didn't diminish gradually. There's no rule because the reason you have the different strains of virus, and some are more deadly, some might be less susceptible to the vaccine acting on it. The reason for all of that is because the more people that get the virus, the more opportunities there are for it to mutate. And you're just rolling the dice. The mutation might be, oh, no big deal, it's better. Or, oh my God, it's twice as deadly. You don't know until you get that variation. So the name of the game is reduce the number of cases. So you don't have widespread viruses that are mutated. Because when we're talking about Delta, Omicron, there have been dozens of variations. The ones that we see are the most communicable. They're the ones that have spread. But you always have the possibility of deadlier virus and more spread, widespread ones. So you have to keep them in perspective. That's the way viruses work. There's no rule that says they get better. They just mutate and change.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to comment?
I just mention one thing.
Yeah.
You know, back when we had the Spanish flu, we didn't have the international travel that we have now. When you look at our variants, most of our variants have come from other countries. Not that they wouldn't have come here anyway, but until every country gets where they can knock down some of these cases, we're going to continue to have a problem. Now that we're doing wastewater testing, I'm really hopeful that's going to do a lot for us. To be honest with you.
I don't know who thought that up. I never would, it would never have occurred to me to do wastewater testing. But I'm not a scientist.
Well, the good thing about wastewater testing is they pull up cases from even people that are asymptomatic because they're still shedding. So they get all the cases. They don't just find out what cases are testing positive like we do with the testing. So I'm really hopeful. Maine has 13 different sites now that they're doing the wastewater testing in. So
Interesting.
I'm done. Promise.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna bring the public comment portion to a close and open it up if anybody on the board wants to discuss. Joe.
Okay. The real question on the table is, when do we don't need masks? That's the real question.
Okay, that's it. I'm moving up. When do we what?
When do we don't need masks? That's the question on the table. In other words, masks are doing a job for us right now.
Right.
Okay, and I'm just looking at Maine. And basically, we still had a 7-day average of 955 cases as of February 14th. So it's still here. If we had we go back to last year, it'd be under 100. Okay, so we're nowhere near doing without rat masks at this point, because it's still here and it's still virulent. And one of the things I was able to pull out was we have a 30-day COVID case numbers in Maine school. There are 11,591 cases reported in the last 30 days in Maine in schools. And of that, there are 38 schools that have some form of breakout. Now, I didn't find Sebago Elementary in this list, which,
We're at 14
yeah, which,
in the last 30 days.
so anyway, Crooked River had 24. Lake Region Middle School had 40. Songolok School at 23. And Stevens Brook had 14. Strangely enough, the high school had less than 5. Okay, so it's still here and it's still in the schools.
It is.
And basically what the masks protect, you could say the students wouldn't get, maybe most of the students would be severely affected. But if the masks keep the virus from going backwards from the school to the community, then that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And if they get in a situation where if somebody wasn't wearing a mask and they had virus and the gentleman beside them or kid beside them was also not wearing mask, or even if it was wearing a mask, it could be transmitted back to the community. So,
You know, I agree, Joe. If I had my way, I would probably say, we'll just wear these masks for the rest of our lives. But you're gonna have some mutiny from, there's some parents out there that are really wanting their kids not to have to wear masks. And I think we have to weigh the pros and cons at some point.
well, the con, I was speaking, okay? The con basically comes down to you're making a decision that you're going to allow the possibility of transmission from the school to some family. Now, somebody that ends up hospitalized in Maine, just hospitalized and dealing with you get a private room when you get COVID, okay?
Joe, can I interrupt for a minute, please?
Sure.
Helen, Joe's supposed to be chatting with us right now.
Yeah. All
Okay,
right, I agree.
thanks. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
But there's everybody goes to the internet, so you can take it for what it's worth, right? But in Maine, the average cost of a hospitalization for COVID is $71,000. And that family that gets hit with that, well, they better have darn good health insurance, or it's going to really do a lot to destroy their lives. Now, if they happen to go on a ventilator, the average cost in Maine is $302,000. So we want to really avoid, if we can prevent some of it from going back through the community and having that happen, that's a good thing. So, looking at the last 30 days, we're nowhere near doing that at the point. So we need to continue to look at it for 30 days. If I were looking at Cumberland County in March of last year, it's under 60 cases. So we're multiples of that. So, like you're saying, in a sense, but I don't want to put a timetable on doing this because it doesn't make sense to do that. You have to basically look at the data and look at the information you have in front of you and not chicken out from doing the job right. I'll shut up at that point.
At this point, public comments over, so thank you. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add tonight?
I think mostly it's just acknowledging, like, whatever your stance is, I don't believe that it's wrong. I think that there are parents that have shared concerns with me that are very valid. I mean, these are little kids. We don't fully understand. I talked to the pediatrician at Boston Children's Hospital, just looking like, I wanted to see this from every angle. I have my own feelings about it, but like trying to be really unbiased. And we may not fully understand some of the speech and language problems that are going to arise from this. We may not fully understand the social emotional piece of it. We're choosing what feels safer for sure. Like those numbers make sense, but I think next steps really are like, okay, like can we distill this down into what those metrics really are? How do we know when we're safe? Like whose guidance do we go by? But I do think you have to be really careful against judging what some parents choose for their kids. I mean, not to pick on you, Helen, but you took your mask down. Imagine what it's like for teachers and kids all day long. They're not allowed to do that. Like, we have to have empathy for what that's like day in and day out, and whether it's right, whether it's wrong.
Right.
I don't think any of us can judge that, but I think acknowledging how difficult it is really important, and validating parents' feelings as well. And I've talked with David about, like, I think it's really important we know how teachers feel. Like, they're in the trenches doing this work day in and day out. So there's a whole lot of sides to it. And like I said, I don't believe there's right and wrong. There's safe and maybe riskier, but I think we have to consider it from every angle. And agreeing right now, numbers are really scary, but at what point can we, I mean, kids shouldn't be masked forever.
Right.
And how do we also build that system of like, this may be something we have to revisit time and time again. Like maybe we have these surges where, hey guys, we have to put our masks on. And I do think we have to be careful of, okay, we'll take masks away, because trying to put them back on again. Messaging is really important, and getting parents to buy in and to trust. And I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but that's the top of my mind.
We do have a data point, which we did last year, about the performance of the kids in school. And we had a rather, actually very good results. And this was during the period of the masks and during the period of COVID. And the kids who actually showed quite a bit of improvement. So
Improvement in what? What do you mean by data?
performance,
Performance in what metric? Sorry.
reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay, there's a report that was put out last year, which is basically the metrics
Mhm.
on what our kids did.
No, I mean more like when I talk about metrics, it's what do we consider a safe threshold to even talk about removing masks? Like, what does that mean for children and families and communities? Because I've looked, and I think every state's going by something different. And, you know, initially it's like, well, we should listen to the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I mean, that's kind of where we still are. They're recommending masks. But I just wonder, like, next steps or like long vision, what does this look like down the road? At what point will we feel safe?
Wouldn't we trust the people who are telling us what to do at the moment and do what they're asking, and then figure out they'll back off when it's time to back off?
I think I'm not your enemy. We're kind of saying the
No,
same
I'm
thing.
just saying, that's
Yeah.
all.
Okay. Wendy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
The only thing I would like to add is that just before we came here, we got a letter from the, the School Board Association, and basically just saying, according to the Maine CDC and Dr. Shaw and the superintendents have got together, the crux of it was just to let's have a little bit more patience and wait and see, and we'll make the decision when the time is right, and going by science. And so it was just kind of as I saw it or interpreted it, it's like, let's pause. It won't go on like this forever, but let's do this rationally using the science. And yes, we will see an end of this at some point. So that's where I stand. I'm willing to stay in neutral for a while until we go into drive.
You don't want to speak to this, do you? Okay, so I thank everybody for their input this evening. What we'll end up doing is revisiting this at our meeting in March. And I would like to discuss with the board members the possibility of changing our normal meeting night. Instead of the fourth Tuesday, I would like to schedule it for the 15th, which is the third Tuesday. Subject to nothing hugely important happening with a select board or planning board agenda. So we'll have to look into that, but tentatively, I would like to know your thoughts on that.
To what end is this? Why are we changing it?
I don't want to wait till the end of March to revisit this again. And I took notes on what Helen was saying. And Helen mentioned, I think we need to continue to revisit where we're getting, by the end of the second week in March, we're getting much closer to spring, which, call me optimistic. I don't know, but I would like to be able to revisit this again. And there are many people who are at a select board meeting tonight, parents who wanted to be here to speak on the reopening plan as well, and who are not able to, and they will have that opportunity at our March meeting.
So the reason that we're changing our date is because I think we should stick with the same date that we have on our agenda. Why would we change it to a week before? I just feel like it's in the
Okay,
schedule.
so you want to stay to the 22nd?
Yeah, I would like to say the
I'm just-
22nd, and it gives us more time.
Joe, your thoughts?
Well, since I'm retired, I don't have an axe to grind in that area. So whatever the majority would want would be fine with me.
Okay, Chris? Yes.
Yeah, I'm neutral. Doesn't really matter to me either way. I do wonder, like, Chris, you were talking about like kids coming back from vacation. So maybe the third week would make more sense. Like, just because if kids are traveling for February vacation, that puts us. Yeah, I think maybe the third week makes more sense.
Why would that be?
Well,
The 15th is the third week.
oh wait, sorry.
There's 2 full weeks after
Oh,
February.
okay. I mean, Chris, what would you say in terms of numbers? Like if we had a bunch of kids coming back from vacation sick?
Well, it looks like from Christmas vacation and from Thanksgiving, it would take, Mondays are our pool testing, about the third Monday, but would we get the results by your Tuesday meeting?
This
That
week we
don't
did,
know. I
last
don't know,
week we
don't
didn't.
have 3 sets of data or 2 sets of data by that time.
I guess I would say that I would prefer personally having that extra time than we really do know, instead of making it earlier. I think every week that we have to look at the numbers and see what's happening is better in terms of discussing it.
I would agree with
So
that.
that's why I feel that the 22nd is better. Like to leave it as it is.
Okay, well, we'll keep it on the 22nd. We will be revisiting the reopening plan. And like I said, all of our meetings right now are subject to change because of what's going on with the proposed quarry. So if there is a select board meeting or a planning board meeting or a board of appeals meeting that we need to be attending, we are flexible enough to change our meeting night. Is, I want to thank everybody who spoke on this subject. I appreciate all of the input. And it's useful to get information. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so. Does anybody have items for a future agenda? Nope. Okay. Do we have public comments on non-agenda items? No? Okay. And information items. Oh, that's fine. So our March workshop is on the 22nd, which is Tuesday at 6:30. And our regular meeting will be same evening at 7 PM. Okay, so I am looking for a motion to adjourn to go into an executive session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to go into executive session.
Seconded. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Wow, couldn't have planned that.